Welcome to the Real Estate Way to Wealth and Freedom podcast with Jacob Ayers, providing actionable content to help you along your journey to financial freedom through real estate investing. As the premier asset class, real estate has helped ordinary people just like you amass fortunes. The benefits of passive income from real estate investing will allow you to live a life you want. And now your host, entrepreneur, real estate investor, and apartment deal syndicator, Jacob Ayers.
Hi, and welcome to the Real Estate Way to Wealth and Freedom podcast. Today our guest is Damion Lupo. Damion's real estate investing career began almost 20 years ago when he bought his first rental income property with a Visa card and a $6,000 cash advance. Damion went to every seminar he could and did everything the coaches told him, and still almost ended up declaring bankruptcy because he was doing the fun stuff and not the hard work. Damion flipped a switch, did the work it took to be successful, and in the next 5 years, built up a $20 million portfolio with 150 properties, including houses, apartments, buildings, and condos, but lost everything in the 2008 crash. Damion rebuilt his investing career and went on to become a sort of genetic entrepreneur, having started and owned more than 35 different businesses. He's also the world's most unemployable man. Damion's role in the real estate industry today is as a lender, where he can live the lifestyle he wants while building his wealth and advising the investors he partners with. Today I'm excited to bring on the show Damion Lupo. Damion, thanks for joining us.
Jacob, it's good to be here, man.
Hey, yeah, thanks. Absolutely. So, Damion, before we get started, you are self-proclaimed the most unemployable man. We have to ask what that is, and then a little bit, just kind of tell us about yourself and a little bit about how you got started investing in real estate.
I think there's something valuable about being a real estate investor and being unemployable, because it means you can never go back to a job. It means you have to make it work. And so you keep, it's actually probably really helpful. So the more the listener, you guys that are listening, can become unemployable, it actually may force you to be successful because you won't have a safety net that is that job. For me, I just wasn't really good at following idiots. And I tended to have people that were pretty stupid that were leading the charge for different things I was doing, whether it was working in a bank or on a political campaign. And what I found was that the people that were in charge that I was answering to typically were not thinking as big as I was thinking. Like, I wanted to win the campaign that I was volunteering for. And the people that were running it didn't care if they won or not. They cared about the next campaign. So they were playing not to lose. They weren't playing to win. And I play to win. So I'm not going to follow somebody that's not playing to win, which means I get fired pretty fast because I push the envelope and I go into the edge and way past it.
Yeah, maybe overcommitment sometimes, kind of burn those ships and go all in, right?
It's basically on fire all the time. But that's how you disrupt things. That's how you push past the norm and the average and the ordinary. And who the hell wants to be ordinary anymore? I mean, If you want to have an extraordinary life, you got to do extraordinary things and be spectacular. And that really freaks a lot of people out, especially bosses.
Yeah, absolutely, Damion. Damion, let's talk about your background and what drew you to real estate investing. How'd you get involved with it? And, what are you doing now?
The funny thing about the intro to real estate is I had an insurance agency. And for a lot of people, they think, oh, that's cool. You can make a lot of money, and insurance agents tend to have a lot of new cars and they have great lifestyles, lots of vacations. And so I was doing this thing for about a year and a half. And I looked at the most successful real estate agent in Farmers Insurance in Arizona when I was doing this 20 years ago. And the guy was making about $1 million take home a year. And I looked at that in the fall of 99 and I said, that's just not that much money compared to what I could make in real estate. So forget this insurance thing. I'm going after the real big money. I'm going after real money in real estate. And it was then that I bought a property a buddy of mine found, took a cash advance on my credit card, $6,000, bought the property. And then I figured it out as I went. And that was really all. It was me diving in and spending a ton of time and money in seminars and just blindly believing what people said instead of challenging it. And that's the benefit of doing this when you're 20, because you don't know any better. And so you're willing to believe anything like, oh, unicorns, cool. Yeah, those exist. And you just run with it. So it actually is pretty helpful if you can have a little naivety when you're doing the real estate game, so you don't second guess everything that's conventional wisdom, which is basically going to tell you can't do it.
Yeah. I always like to say ignorance is bliss.
Totally.
Yeah, so Damion, so one of these interesting facts about yourself is you've spent over $1 million on seminars and mentors. Well, one, how does one get to that point of spending $1 million on those types of things, and how has it helped you and gotten you to where you are today?
Jacob, there's this idea in business that you really have to keep investing in the business for a while. You can't just start harvesting the thing. And for me, as a real estate investor, part of your job is to keep reinvesting in you because you're the business of creating investments. And so when I started, I was basically investing in every seminar that I could find, every boot camp that somebody pitched. I signed up for all of them. And I trusted and believed that it would bear fruit. And so if I spent $5,000 for a weekend, I'd go there and I would do something different. And this is a key. This is probably the thing that'll make somebody $1 million or bankrupt them. When you go to a seminar and you get all these cool ideas and these nuggets, people will say, I got this one nugget and it's worth 10 times what I paid. It's not worth jack unless you do something with it. So the key is you take the one thing, the most important thing, most valuable thing you can think of in that event, and you go do it. You actually implement it. And so I kept doing that over and over again. And as I was investing in seminars, I realized I'm missing one piece, which is critical, and that's the coach, the mentor. And so I hired those people in my life, including one that I invested about $400,000 with over a 2-year period. So I went to the top of the food chain, not for everybody, but that's how I spent $1 million and invested it, because I went out and found the best information, the best people, the best places where I can invest that money so that I would get smarter and stronger and I wouldn't have to make it all up on my own.
Yeah, you are the best investment you can make in yourself. As your education, like you said, you are your business. So you have to continually learn, improve, get to know more things, and just learn your business in and out. So yeah, I can see how you got there.
Yeah, there's no plateauing. A lot of times I hear people saying, I just want to get to $5,000 or $10,000 a month and then I'll be good. And there's this idea of retirement or whatever it is. The universe doesn't work like that. If you just think you're going to do something and then you're going to quit, the universe is going to unravel what you've done, because it's called the law of entropy. You've got to keep putting energy into things that matter. And if that's your investments or your relationship, I mean, it would be like saying, I'm going to have a relationship and I'm going to have passive sex the rest of my life. Like, I'm not going to engage. That relationship's going away, man. It is not going to last. Same thing with investments. It's the same deal. You got to actively engage permanently. That's kind of what a universal law.
Yeah, good point. So Damion, let's talk about your real estate investments. You took a $6,000 cash advance out on a credit card, bought your first house. What did that look like? And then how'd you move into different deals, and what did you eventually get into?
Well, I thought that was just kind of normal. You take whatever resource you have. And at the time, I had a very early insurance agency that didn't really produce anything. And I had a credit card. So I went out and bought this house. And one of the things that I did do that was smart, and there's plenty of things I did that were stupid. One of the things I did that was smart is I went out and bought this house, bought a couple more. And when I realized I was about to go bankrupt with those 3 houses, because I bought them but didn't actually sell or rent them, so they just kept bleeding me, I realized, okay, I've got to go take action. I've got to return phone calls. I was sabotaging myself. And as soon as I realized that and made the decision, I launched, and over 30 days bought 8 more houses, sold all of them on contract or rented them out. And so now I have 11 rental properties, and I went from 0 to 11 in 30 days. And I realized, hey, you know what? I can do this over and over again. That's one of the keys. People get so squirrel brained where they're just bouncing around from thing to thing. And we're so distracted by all of our devices. We're used to not focusing. And so I just focused on houses, basic, simple 3-bedroom houses. And I did this over and over again. And over the next, I think it was about 18 months, bought like 60 houses. So it's not like I recreated or invented something. I just did the same thing over and over again. And it was in basically the same area. I got into trouble when I started going all over the country. My ego decided I was going to take over. At the time, I thought I wanted to be Donald Trump. This is like real estate Donald Trump, not President Trump.
Yeah, right.
And so I did that. I was like, all right, I'm going to take over. And that got me into a lot of trouble because all these different environments, different states, different laws, different jurisdictions, massive amounts of chaos. And it was just me thinking, I can't make the money in my neighborhood. And the truth is there's an acre of diamonds right in front of us in our backyard. And if we realize that, we can make all the wealth we want really right next door.
Yeah. What were your goals at this time, Damion, when you were going from 0 to 11 houses in 30 days? Did you have any kind of like vision or any kind of goal in mind, or were you just buying as many houses as you could and just trying to rule the world one house at a time?
Well, it's a great question. It's sort of funny because a lot of times people go to seminars and I can always tell a brand new investor because they'll say, I'm buying 5 to 10 houses a month. And I go, really? So how many did you buy this month? Well, I've got like 6 that I'm looking at right now. And I go, right. How many have you done total? Well, I got 1 and it was a disaster. So people always have that spin. And here's a really good motivator. When you're about to go bankrupt, and I was 30 days away from filing Chapter 7. And I only realized that because of something that changed. I actually looked at the numbers, not like what was in the bank, but I actually looked at what my draw was, what was bleeding me. And this is a mistake that business owners, small business owners, and investors make all the time, almost across the board, because they don't understand the numbers. They don't know what to look at, and they don't have anybody outside of them them actually saying, here's the reality. So they kind of deceive themselves. And I was doing that for about 4 months. And when I finally looked at the numbers, the fear of going bankrupt created a whole bunch of action based on the decision. I am not going to go bankrupt. That is not okay. This is stupid. I'm right beginning in this business. If I just answered the phone, if I just actually followed through, I can fix this. Pain is a really good motivator. I mean, I didn't want the pain.
So one of the things you were doing wrong is not really just renting these properties out or calling tenants back or prospective tenants back. Is that what the holdup was, or what was the issue?
There's this thing that happens when we do business and real estate. We tend to find the things that we're really good at or the things that are really fun. And for me, the fun part was learning how to remodel a house. And I cut a couple of deals, bought some houses. So I had these 3 houses, but I got overwhelmed with the amount of people that were calling me that wanted to lease option or buy or rent. It's kind of a good problem to have when that many people are calling. But I thought, yeah, I just don't want to do that because it's more fun. It's interesting because I'm a growth guy. I love growing. I love learning. And so I was learning about how to remodel a house. I wasn't that excited about going and doing a contract with somebody. And it was the most important thing that I needed to do. It was the one thing, as Gary Keller says in the book, there was one thing I needed to do, and that was to return phone calls. That one thing made me a fortune.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And for those not familiar with Gary Keller's One Thing, you want to kind of explain that principle?
Yeah, there's a book called The One Thing. Gary talks about the idea that there's one thing in your life at any one moment, any one day. There's one thing that you can do and should do that will, by doing that one thing, will make everything else either easier or irrelevant. And there's always that thing. And we tend to avoid that thing and we do the other things and we don't really get leverage and we don't really get momentum until we realize that one thing and tackle it. And all of a sudden our life sort of opens up completely, miraculously quickly.
Yeah, right. So once you kind of figured out that one thing, Damion, it kind of sounds like you took off. You bought, what was it, up to 150 properties, a $20 million portfolio value, and then it came crashing down. Can you talk about what went wrong and what happened there?
Yeah, it was actually your question before this was what was the goal?
Yeah. Let's not get too far ahead.
So that's actually where. So my goal was more. It wasn't just a number. If it was a number, at first it was $1 million, making $1 million, being a millionaire. Then I hit that. Then it was a multimillionaire, got my $2 million. It was always more. There's a great scene in Wall Street 2 where the question is, what's your number when you're done? And Josh Brolin says more. I was exactly the same way. It was never enough. It was I wanted more. And the next thing was the Ferrari and then the American Express Black Card. And it was always more. There wasn't really a deep burning thing. It was just more stuff. And so I did build up this giant portfolio in 7 different states, $20 million worth of property. And because it was just more, it was never enough. And my ego was driving and the ends justified the means. And if your ends are just more, it's never enough, then you're literally going to get out of control because it's like in politics, power begets power and absolute power corrupts. And that's sort of what happens as you get bigger. If you don't have a foundation based on values and a mission and a deep sense of why you're doing what you're doing, you will literally get lost in the commotion and chaos and create carnage and you'll end up blowing your life up. 2008 was going to happen whether 2008 happened or not, meaning that my stuff was going to crumble eventually under its own weight because I didn't have a foundation that was solid. It was built on quicksand because it was built on the idea of more.
Yeah, right. That's I think a really important topic, Damion. I hear a lot of people who just don't necessarily have end goals, or they're just kind of chasing that shiny object, whether it be, I've got friends and acquaintances who are, looking at multifamilies in Sacramento and raw land in South Texas and, single families in Tennessee and just like all over the board and just like chasing like the next biggest thing. I think it's really important to have vision, goals, reasons why they're kind of driving you and acting as your roadmap to, your final goals, that is.
I totally agree. There's a thing that happens for people, and I think a lot of folks that are listening right now are going to be saying, well, I don't really know what my why is or my purpose or my passion. Like I like to golf or I like my family or I love my family. But then they go, but I don't know what to do. What's really driving me? I mean, I don't like my job. So there's a lot of this negative stuff, or I want more free time because I want to golf and whatever it is. Here's how you get to your passion, your purpose, your reason that you're here. It's how you get the universe to conspire with you. If you will take your goals and next to your goals, you'll identify which of your 6 human needs. And I talk about this in Reinvented Life, the book that I wrote 5 years ago. If you will figure out which of your goals are satisfying those human needs, and here's one of the human needs that we focus on almost all the time. It's the security one. It's why we talk about money all the time. It's why we go to work, because we want to have the security of a roof over our head and money when we're older. But we tend to focus most of our time on that. Sometimes we have goals that have relationship pieces, and that's part of the love and connection. But what we miss is the contribution and significance. And if we don't have goals that have to do with contribution and significance, we get lost wondering why we're here. And so you really have to start looking at your goals and make sure that you've added in the contribution and significance. This is why I teach. This is why my focus in everything I do, whether it's martial arts or financial literacy, is about teaching, because there's significance and contribution there, and it feeds me. And the passion and the purpose in your life will bubble up out of those goals if you make sure that your 6 human needs are actually tied into those goals. Without it, you probably don't have your purpose on there.
Yeah. What are these things do you think people might be overlooking or missing, Damion?
Well, I think people are really, there's a fear thing. It's kind of like why I got triggered to take action back in the late spring of 2000. I was afraid I was going to go bankrupt. And so people are in a fear space. Their reptilian brain is triggering their activity instead of them thinking forward. I mean, we're the only mammal that has the ability to look into the future. And yet, what do we do? We're fearful about the future. And so if we can start asking the question, if we just ask the question, what am I going to do today and this year that's going to have to do with contribution and significance? It would change our focus from trying to figure out how we're not going to starve to death all the time, which puts us in a very hand-to-mouth type of lifestyle. And it doesn't really get us anywhere. It just keeps us in the proverbial rat race where we're always stuck, afraid, and nervous about the future instead of embracing it and looking forward to it.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to what you first said about playing to win and not playing to not lose, that is.
Yeah, and it's always fascinating to me when you can hear the words in people and whether they're really playing to win or whether they're playing not to lose. You watch it in sports all the time. You can see the team that starts playing not to lose, and then you see the team that is only focused on winning. That is their entire drive. It's fascinating. One of the things that's really important is that we're really, really conscious around the people that are influencing us. And I noticed that broke people that are stuck, tend to be around other broke people that are stuck. People that are doing well don't hang out with people that are just basically victims and have reasons and excuses. People that are winning, people that are creating wealth, people that are having a significant impact on the planet are around other people like that. So the question is, who are you around? If you're having a problem with your life, you might need to reevaluate the people that are influencing you, because you are the average of those people in every way. Financially, physically, ethically, morally, it's all going to end up being an average. So you got to be really conscious about that. And it might be hard because sometimes that means you got to fire your family or your friends. But the truth is, if you want a different life, you have to start by the environment you're in. And that includes the people.
Yeah, definitely, Damion. I think everybody's kind of aware of that general phrase or ideology that you are like the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? And another thing I think is interesting is something you mentioned earlier is one of those things you didn't like doing was, picking up phones, answering calls, dealing with contracts. And I think it's also important to recognize your weaknesses and surround yourself with other people who complement your strengths and their weaknesses as well. So kind of talking about people on your team, how have you built your team to, kind of support your strengths and their weaknesses or vice versa?
Jacob, this is a really good question. If we think about the thing that we are the best at, that it's our masterpiece, what we love, and we're just kind of a badass around, and you take everything outside of that and you find somebody else to do it. And it's one of the things that people make the mistake on, because usually they don't even outsource it. But if they do, that's way too late, is the numbers. Most people are not numbers geeks. I happen to be a numbers geek. So I like diving into the numbers because they tell a story and I can get a lot of truth there. But people tend to run their businesses and investments based on their guts and a misnomer around reality. And so one of the first things that I think that there are 2 people that you bring in immediately when you start investing. 1, a bookkeeper, and 2, a coach. And the bookkeeper keeps you honest about your numbers, and your coach, you want a coach that can actually look at those numbers with you and give you the honest feedback on here's what's really going on and here's what we need to look at. Those are the first 2 people that you want on your team, because if you don't have them, you could be doing some great stuff and literally bury yourself and blow up your business without even realizing it, because your ego takes over, or you just don't understand what's really happening, and you've got your ship bleeding, and maybe the things that really make you money, you're not paying attention to those because the other thing is really more fun. So those 2 pieces, the bookkeeper and the coach, are going to be your power team to start with.
Yeah, I think that's really important, Damion. And one thing you mentioned that I think is important is earlier we mentioned ignorance is bliss. And that's one thing I really like about real estate investing is when I was first getting started out in this industry, all I had to go on were the numbers of looking at properties. I didn't, have this emotional attachment to anything. I didn't have any gut feeling to go off of. It were just pure and simple the numbers. So I like that. And it kind of attracted me to real estate investing in the first place.
Well, it's funny because there was a friend of mine that made this comment not too long ago, and this is a guy that has borrowed $250 million on his own deals. So he's very savvy. And he said, in development, one of the things you often have to do is just shoot from the hip. It's a gut instinct, because sometimes what you're making up. It's like Steve Jobs making up the iPod. There wasn't anything to reference. There wasn't anything to really say compared to this other thing. So in development, that can be true. But the truth is most of us are not in the development game. Most of us are in the real estate game where we can compare things and we don't have to speculate. We can literally say, this is what this property is going to be worth if I do these things and change it. And really our creative mind gets to be in the space of creating value versus creating something out of thin air that maybe nobody even cares about. And that's really the difference between a pro and an amateur speculator.
Yeah, definitely, Damion. So, Damion, let's kind of switch gears here and talk about people that are looking at potentially investing in real estate or maybe something else. I know you're a serial entrepreneur, that is, and I know you've got a lot of experience with different things. So, with millions of options and just endless information online, where do people go and what do they do first? How do they get started investing in real estate or something else if that's what they're interested in?
I think in the beginning, you kind of have to figure out what fits you and what you can see doing long term. It's easy to have the flavor of the week. So in the beginning, you don't even know what flavors are out there. So it's a good thing to just kind of poke around. And then once you figure out, hey, this sounds pretty appealing. Maybe that's mini storages, maybe it's fourplexes, whatever it is. The suggestion I have for you is to narrowly focus on that and become really good at it. Look at a lot of deals. And I'm not talking about 10, I'm talking about 100 deals. Before you look at it, once you look at 100 deals in your niche, you're going to actually have an appreciation for the vocabulary and you're going to have an appreciation for what's real and what you should see in the deal that makes sense. And it's always fascinating to me when people say, well, I'm looking for deals. I haven't really found anything. And I say, well, how many have you looked at? I don't know, probably 20 or 30. And I've done the numbers on like 3. And I think you literally have no idea what you're talking about. You've got to go out there and actually see deals and not 47 different kinds of deals, but really you want to have an understanding. If you're looking at mini storages, you should be able to get to a point after you look at 100 of them where you can vet a deal, at least preliminarily, in like a minute. That's how fast you should be able to do it. And that only happens because your instincts are based on repetition. So figure out what that thing is you're going to focus on. And you might switch, but the squirrel hunter in you is going to screw you up if you don't focus on something and get really, really good at it and become sort of an expert in an area and in a certain type of investment.
Yeah, right. Makes a lot of sense. So, Damion, when we're talking about our teams here, you mentioned that you have teams that surround you and help you out and their weaknesses play to your strengths or vice versa. Who are the critical people on your team and, how have they helped you get to where you're at?
There's there's the ideas and then there's the implementation. And so some of the people that are really important, you always want to have an attorney. And I think a lot of times we go, dang, an attorney, that's an expensive thing. Well, there's a thing called Legal Shield. Legal Shield means you get a law firm anywhere you are in the country and it's $25 a month. That's an easy way to have an attorney on your team at all times. That, your bookkeeper, your coach, you've got to have people that are implement. If you're the brains, you've got to have people that are actually doing the work of pushing stuff around. And there are a lot of people, and I don't know how this works, but some people love just pushing things around. They have paper and they like to keep it organized. That is not me. So you've got to have that person doing these things. And granted, in the beginning, you don't have the ability to pay for all these different things, but it's those things that you need to really plan for, like building an org chart. If you think in 12 months or 24 months, I'm going to have these pieces, you want to have the executors, the implementers, so that you can be the brain of organizing your empire. And then you've got the different pieces that you're not good at, which is most everything. There's very little that you're going to be excellent at. You should just remember that. And look for people that can support you. The legal, the accounting, the operations. I mean, all these pieces have to be done by somebody and it'll default to you if you don't start putting people in play. One of the great resources that I've used over the last 3-4 years is the Upwork, the Elance, the things online. It's awesome. The talent you can find to do all sorts of different things. If you go there, you don't have to hire somebody full time. You don't have to pay crazy amounts for people. There are 7 billion people on the planet and there's a lot of skilled people that don't require $100 an hour for their services.
Yeah, definitely. Upwork's a service I use quite often, and it's great. Like you said, you can find anything on there almost. So.
Yep, it's damn near anything. I mean, it's kind of unbelievable. Tim Ferriss talks about this in the 4-Hour Work Week a lot with the virtual assistants and the things that can be done. And beyond that, I mean, you've got apps for almost anything, and you've got virtual assistants. So if you're doing all the work yourself, you're literally missing the boat. That is not the world we live in anymore.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, Damion, you took a pretty hard crash in 2008 and kind of switched gears, started becoming what you've deemed as a genetic entrepreneur, right? So can you tell us what that means and what you're up to these days?
So a genetic entrepreneur, I think there's something inside of those of us that are have a little DNA sculpting where we are an entrepreneur. We can't get out of it. It is what it is. And so I own that. I mean, it's why I'm not employable. And if you have that entrepreneurial spirit, you know it. If this is resonating with you, then that's who you are. I have started a lot of businesses. The reason I start them is because I can't help myself. I'm also not afraid to have things not work and fail. And here's what happens when that takes place, if it hadn't happened to you yet. And I remember somebody telling me years ago, they said, I'm not interested in doing business with you or loaning you money or anything until you've lost a couple of businesses. And I thought, that is stupid. Why do I have to go through bankruptcy a couple of times for you to actually want to do business with me? Well, now that I've lost businesses, now that I've lost a portfolio, a $20 million portfolio, I get why that rule was in place. I am very leery about doing that type of thing, investing with people or doing business with people at a big level if they haven't gone through the pain of losing stuff. And it's because when you go through the process of losing, you get stronger and you disconnect from the thing being you. When I lost my thing in 2008, I was so connected to it, I lost my identity. And I want to know that somebody has gone through the process of being able to look at business as business and not thinking that it's them and if it goes away, they go away. That's what you learn when you go through businesses, when they fail, when you lose money, you get stronger and then you do better. Damon John talks about this in The Power of Broke. You do one business, you mess up, you learn something, you apply it to the next business. Then you lose that business and you learn something new. So about the seventh or eighth one you do, you're like, okay, I actually got my stuff together, I got my team together. I know what I should be doing and shouldn't be doing. I know how to capitalize this. I know that I don't want partners or I do, but you don't know that stuff in the beginning. And even if you read a book about it, you won't have it at an emotional level, which is why a coach is so powerful, because that person can help you see things that you don't understand emotionally, that you've read a book about, but you're not willing to make the decision about because in your mind it makes sense, but emotionally you don't have the depth that you would get after you lose something. So again, I go back to always have that coach that's bald or gray, that's been through the trenches and has bled and has the scars. That person is going to be able to hold space and give you perspective when you can't see it.
Yeah, really good points, Damion. I think that resonates with a lot of people out there. I'm a younger guy myself, and you do see some rightfully so skepticism sometimes that you get as a younger professional in this industry. Lived the 2008 housing crash, or if you were, you weren't that involved in it, and you kind of, some people want to see a little bit of bumps and bruises and how you've reacted to those along the way. So yeah, I definitely understand.
It's a powerful piece, and it's really kind of bizarre when you think about the amount of people that are running money on Wall Street that are in their 20s that have never actually experienced a crash, the amount of people that are doing deals, that are the experts, that are teaching seminars. And it's not that these people are bad people. They just haven't been through something. When I hear somebody say, I've been doing real estate investing since 2011, that's not bad, but I don't trust them to understand how to structure deals and survive a crash because they haven't done it before. It's a different experience of looking out. Like I say no to almost every deal that I see, and I can tell you why most deals are going to be bad. In fact, there's a healthy way to look at deals. Every time you look at a deal, look at that deal as if it's the worst deal you're ever going to see and make the deal prove itself to you. If you look at all deals as bad until they prove themselves otherwise, you're going to end up with a lot more money and a lot less heartache because you won't be saying yes to a lot of dumb crap. And so that's kind of the process of why you have to find people that have been around for 15, 20 years and have those people on your team. Otherwise, y'all are smoking all this hopium around the future that's so bliss and it cycles. Let's be honest. Things cycle.
Yeah.
You got to be ready for that.
Yeah, great. So Damion, what capacity are you involved in real estate investing today?
I'm in the safe space. I'm an investor. I'm not a speculator. I'm a lender. So I invest in things that they're recession proof, things that are like apartments that are housing. I like millennial housing because it doesn't exist a whole lot. And there's 80 million millennials. I like things that serve them. It's not A's, like multi-units. It's not C's. I actually had an apartment complex in Memphis next to Graceland, and it was a C property. Numbers were amazing. The problem is it was a C property and people died on my property. My security guard actually got killed on my property. And so I don't play in that space anymore. It's like why I don't invest in strip clubs. Great cash flow. I mean, those things, they crap cash, but I don't invest in them. They're not part of what I'm interested in. Same with C properties. They're good for a recession. We know a recession is going to happen. It's part of the cycle. We've been going up for almost a decade. That's going to change. I mean, interest rates they're going to increase about a point over the next 12 months. That's going to push the markets down. 15 to 20% correction in the real estate markets will happen across the board because of the rate rises that the Fed has said that they're going to do. So I like things that don't really matter. Mini storages don't matter. Market goes down, doesn't matter. People aren't going to just not have their stuff. They're still going to have their stuff. People are still going to live somewhere. So I'm lending on those things and I'm buying those things. And when it makes sense, I'm building them. So those are the things that I look at. It's simple. It's not sexy, but it is recession proof and they produce cash flow. And that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah. Awesome. Great. Well, Damion, what are your future goals with real estate investing and entrepreneurship?
The idea around entrepreneurship in general, for me, I'm looking for problems to solve. I'm looking for, and there's a huge problem. It's called financial illiteracy. That people just don't understand numbers. They don't understand finance, investing. They don't get it. They're very disempowered. So my job as an entrepreneur is to find ways to lift people up, to empower them, because here's a secret around retirement or freedom. When we think about freedom, usually we default to it's a certain amount of money or it's a certain amount of cash flow. And I say categorically that's wrong. Financial freedom and true freedom in life is about confidence, because if you have the confidence in your ability to do something, to go build a house, buy a house, have investments, and you lose, you go, okay, I got it. But that wasn't, you just took away the stuff. I can go create again. And if you can create it again, that confidence puts you in a place of permanent freedom, regardless of what happens in the economy, regardless of what happens to your money. So my job is to find ways to create that confidence and I'm kind of a personal trainer of finance. My job is to get that muscle stronger so that you are able to go out there regardless of what's happened and you can create. So that's what I'll be doing with real estate. I like to support people that are creating good deals, that are building their confidence. So I lend to people that I trust. I lend on projects that make sense. And so I enjoy that space right now. And then the places where I can build things that are lasting, like apartments for people that make sense, not speculation in the A markets for people that are driving their Ferraris. I don't have any interest in serving those people. It's not my thing. But I do want to serve people that are out there that are creating. And so that's kind of where I like the millennial space, because in my mind, the millennials are like the creative generation. They're just creating stuff. So I'm going to do a lot to support that.
Yeah, awesome. Great. Well, Damion, what are your reasons why? That is what keeps you up at night? What keeps you going? Why are you doing what you're doing?
Part of this is a major part of this is watching both of my parents play by the rules, do what they were told, work for the government, and they ended up retiring broke and scared. One of the most powerful things that ever happened to me was about 2013. I was sitting in Alaska where I grew up, and I just found out that my dad was terminal with cancer. And so I went up and was having coffee with him, and we were sitting there talking and thanking him for being in my life, knowing he wasn't going to be there very much longer. And he looked at me and he said, there were just so many things that I wanted to do. And I died a little bit.
Man, that's
I thought,
awful.
It's a terrible thing to see someone and feel their regret. And what I realized was that two things. One, that was not okay for my life. I was not going to spend the rest of my life doing and living such that looking back, I was going to have regret. And the other thing that really hit me was, you know what? There is a lot I can do to help other people not have that regret, have other people where they look back and they go, damn, that was spectacular. And I lived. I did the things I wanted. I connected. I had the significance and the impact. I had the contribution. It was part of my life. I planned it. I executed it. And my job, my purpose, my reason for being is to empower people with the ability to have no regrets. And it will last the rest of my life. There's 7 billion people. I think there's a few that need that help. And that's my job. That's my life mission.
Yeah, awesome, Damion. Well, that's really important, and it's great. I like it. Well, Damion, as we're wrapping up here, we've got a lightning round, just a series of a few questions, and we'll just fire them at you and you answer from the hip. How does that sound?
All right, let's fire them away.
All right. First question is, what was your biggest hurdle getting started investing in real estate, and how did you overcome it?
I think it was a second guessing my ability because I had no ability. And so I just trusted that I would figure it out. And so I pulled the trigger on the deal. Probably the stupidest thing you can do is put a house on a Visa card. But that was the first thing I did because I knew that if I took action, I would learn. And that was the worst case scenario that I would learn. So moving into the thing that I was afraid of, whatever I'm afraid of now is probably the thing that I need to do. It's most important. And that's how I kind of live going forward.
Yeah, awesome. Okay. Damion, do you have a personal habit that contributes to your success?
Yeah, every day I clear myself out. I use a blank slate principle by meditating. Literally every day before the sun comes up, I'm outside and I am meditating and I'm putting it all out there. So I start with the meditation and then I journal and I plan. So my day is blocked out. I know what I'm going to do. I know what I'm going to accomplish. And when it's done, I'm done. It gets into the journal and I'm not hanging on to the stuff that happened, good or bad. I'm just moving through and moving on.
Yeah, good. Do you have an online resource that you find valuable?
An online resource. Yeah, the buttons that make things not show up, like the things that block Facebook and the things that block Twitter and all these dings and bings and all the notifications, all the buttons that turn those off. That's the most powerful thing I can tell you that I found online or on my computer, because that stuff will suck your life. It'll suck your time if you don't take over and take control of it.
Oh, yeah, I think I'm guilty of that. Anytime I get a little ding for an email, it's like I've got to check it. And sometimes I just need to turn it off and, stay focused on my task at hand. And I'm certainly guilty of that too.
Most of the population now, we're so used to being on demand for everybody else and anything else. And the truth is, you don't have a life. You're just part of somebody else's agenda until you start turning those things off and stop reacting and start planning.
Oh, I love it. That's really powerful. All right, Damion, what book would you recommend to the listeners and why?
In the real estate world, I would recommend Reinvented Life. And I recommend this because it's the work that I did in real estate. It's the book that Chris and I wrote, and it will help you understand behind the scenes what's really involved. And it's not just the stories and what we did in transforming ourselves, but it's really understanding the questions that you can ask yourself to create your plan, the questions you wouldn't even know to ask until after you've been through it. So it's a massive hack. It'll give you a 10-year head start on wherever you are if you read the book and do the exercises and answer the questions inside the book.
Awesome. Great. And lastly, Damion, if you were to give advice to your 20-year-old self to get started investing in real estate, what would it be?
Always pay a coach. Have a coach in your life that you are paying. You'll pay attention to the things you're paying for. And you want somebody that's older and grayer. There tends to be a level of respect for people that are older and wiser, that have been through the trenches. And the worst problem with being successful is the ego starts to take over and you'll stop listening and you think that you're the smartest person on the planet. And the problem is you're eventually going to get run over. So the advice would be always have this baller, grayer person in your life that you're paying to ask questions and hold space for you to see the truth.
Yeah, awesome, Damion. Well, Damion, you've certainly given us a lot of great content today and lots of stuff to think about. I know you have a site where you help people like this come up with different financial decisions and help people out with like your mission you were talking earlier. Could you talk a little bit about where people can find you and what that is?
Yeah, the best place for people to find me is to visit DamionLupo.com. That's where all the work that I do, all the resources, the books, the workbooks, the strategies, and the tools are all going to live. So anything that you're trying to do, take control of your finances, figure out how to get your money out of Wall Street, whatever it is you're trying to do, if you're just trying to rearrange your own thinking, you're going to be able to find resources there and you're going to be able to get whatever works for you. It's going to be sitting there waiting for you.
All right, great. Well, Damion, as we're wrapping up here, is there any piece of parting guidance you'd like to leave with our audience?
Yeah, the thing that's most profound, I think, for entrepreneurs is to realize that mistakes are they're not failures unless you don't learn from them. That the universe gives you these opportunities to grow and it's wrapped up in a gift called pain. And when you embrace that and realize that you're going to get stronger and have a bigger impact, the more of those you go through, it's about speed, going through the mistakes and learning and growing as quickly as you can.
Yeah, awesome. Great, Damion. Well, thank you for all that, Damion, and we certainly appreciate your time today. For those listeners that want to get in touch with Damion more, you can visit him at www.damionlupo.com, and we'll link that in the show notes. Damion, we thank you for joining us today and appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jacob. It's been awesome. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, absolutely, Damion. Thank you. All right, that wraps up our episode today with Damion Lupo. I hope you're getting value out of this show. If you are, please leave a rating and review on whichever platform you're listening on. As always, if you have any questions or comments or want to hear something or someone specific on this show, reach out to me. You can contact me at www.jacobayers.com/contact or connect with me on Facebook at The Real Estate Way to Wealth and Freedom. Till next week, signing off, I'm your host, Jacob Ayers.
You've been listening to the Real Estate Way to Wealth and Freedom podcast, providing you actionable content to build your real estate empire. Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for personal advice. The opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have a potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of the Real Estate Way to Wealth and Freedom, LLC exclusively.